go, guys. Let me just make sure that my microphone is actually turned on. It looks like it is. I can see the little meter going up and down, so that's good. Look, camera's okay. Microphone is okay. Streamlabs didn't send me any notifications, but it seems like it's okay. Let's check the YouTubes. Oh, I see myself, so that's a good sign. Hello, Death the Kid. Good to see you, man. I just, it's always a situation where I'm never really 100% sure if Streamlabs is going to properly cooperate with me, so I have to, really get in its face and make sure everything is looking okay. So I'm just kind of setting up the chat log real quick. Hello, Wrath of Wood. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm glad to have you guys in here. Well, today, we're getting into the green goodness. You might have noticed by the title it says B for Grief, and that's kind of a sign of what we're going to be talking about with the cube today. Because there's some interesting things that I really wanted to go over about green. Green has kind of been one of the more intriguing colors to work on. So is it Streamlabs or Steamlabs? It's Streamlabs. If anybody's curious, if you guys are trying to get into, streaming and stuff like that, look up a program. It's totally free called Streamlabs OBS. I use it all the time. Cinder Shadow uses it all the time. It's really reliable. It's very streamlined, and it's very user-friendly. But if you wanted to get into the more complex stuff, because you'll find that, like I said, it's very streamlined and user-friendly, so because of the user-friendliness of it, it'll sometimes cut corners. So if you want a program that doesn't cut corners the same way that Streamlabs does, look into the regular old OBS Studio, which also does streaming. I actually own both. I have Streamlabs and OBS. The only reason why I use Streamlabs OBS instead of the regular OBS Studio is because I'm not the most tech-savvy guy. I'm not very good with computers, which is really funny because my father is actually a computer programmer. He's basically been doing it almost his whole life. He's very, very smart when it comes to computers. But me, not so much. I'm not a very tech-savvy guy, and even with really simplified stuff with computers, I struggle. So that's why I like to use Streamlabs, is because it's really streamlined for people who are not super tech savvy like myself. So yeah, if you're interested in it, go ahead. It's downloadable for free. Both of those programs are free to download. So before we get into the green stuff, I actually wanted to show off these cards real quick. Some of you guys who were in my stream where I got the package from Bowfalcon might remember these three cards. These were all I streamed with XSplit from my PC. Yeah, I've never heard of that program. I have a couple of programs involved with streaming and video editing, but I pretty much stick to Streamlabs just because it's so much easier for me to use. Excuse me. For anybody who was in here when Bowfalcon sent me that package, these are three cards that I actually put into my cube, but we already did, I wouldn't recommend it, it's full of ads. Okay, good to know, Wrath of Wood. I wasn't really thinking about changing up my programs anyways. I mean, I really do want to learn how to use OBS Studio, but I have to actually take the time to do it, and it's very rough because I want to stream, but I also have a work schedule, and I kind of have to balance the two, and it's kind of tough to try and teach myself that stuff. I'll get to it eventually. I feel like I will eventually get to it, but I kind of have to go at my own pace, so it's all good. But yeah, so these three cards that Bowfalcon sent me made it into my cube. I actually also managed to put all of the Vivid lands that Bowfalcon gave me into the cube as well. So those are in the lands section, which we will get to eventually. So I figured instead of showing off the lands, I'll just wait until we get to the land portion of the cube. But I wanted to show these off because these are blue and black, and we already did the blue and black colors. I added in Intruder Alarm, which I was really surprised. I've never really seen this card before, and I was really surprised to find out that it's this major combo engine card. which, you know, like I said, I've never heard of it or seen it until Bo Falcon sent it to me, and I looked it up and found out lots of people have, like, all these ridiculous combos built around it. And I also happened to find that Intruder Alarm does actually combo with a few different cards in the cube. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to throw it in. Hey, Cinder Shadow, good to see you, dude. I'm actually really glad you're here. I was actually going to ask you, I figured I would wait until later, but I was just wondering if you're going to do Minecraft today. And if not, it's all good. So let me know if you're planning on doing some Minecraft tonight. I'll understand if you're not doing Minecraft, because you kind of expressed that you were kind of burnt out a bit on Minecraft and you've been wanting to play more arenas. So if not, it's all good. But if you happen to be doing some Minecraft tonight, I might want to play with you. So let me know. But yeah, I was really surprised that this card is as broken as it is. It does combo with some cards in my cube. So I did actually decide, sound the alarm combo's going off. Yeah, it's true. I decided that because of how much of a combo engine this is, and the fact that it actually does combo with a few different cards that I own in the cube, I thought it would be an auto-include, so I did actually stick it into the cube. I need to go to bed early tonight. I have a job interview tomorrow morning, so it will probably be a short arena tonight. Okay, no worries, Cinder Shadow. Dude, I do have to tell you, I actually stayed up until 3 in the morning last night playing Minecraft. You want to know what I was doing until 3 in the morning in Minecraft? Building a goddamn shovel. I stayed up until 3 in the morning building a shovel. It took me, like, no joke, ever since, like, pretty much from the moment that I logged on to Minecraft and was continuously playing it, I spent all my time, like, I did kind of arrange, like, a whole process because I wanted to get something specific done, but in the end it all turned into, dude, if you want to get any of this stuff you want done, you need to build a really nice shovel. So I spent all night building a frickin' shovel. It drove me nuts because when I finally turned the game off at 3 in the morning, I sat there and I was like, I spent my whole night building a shovel. How fucking ridiculous is that? Anyways, yeah, so because of that, I put the card in. Sorry, I kind of got distracted there, but yeah, this card's great. I've not seen it play yet, so I really don't know what kind of effect it's going to have on the cube, but it should be pretty interesting. There's something I was going to say about it. Oh yeah, so like you guys also have to keep in mind, whenever I put new cards in my cube, like it's not like Mike Hatcher's cube where he can just keep adding cards and keep adding cards and keep adding cards. Every time I put a new card in, something has to come out. So I did actually have to take 3 cards out of the cube to get these cards in. I can't offhand remember right away all the cards that I took out. I think, I'm trying to remember what they were, but it's not immediately coming to me. The Void Mage Prodigy I remember really well. This guy's great too. I'm really excited to see what he does in the cube. But Void Mage Prodigy replaced the Merfolk Looter that I had in the cube. Because remember I was saying how I was really unsure about the Merfolk Looter. I don't really like what it does necessarily. So I kind of decided like way early on that I was going to replace that Merfolk Looter. So I went ahead and put Void Mage Prodigy in there to replace it, and it fits perfectly because it took a 2-mana creature out and put a 2-mana creature in, which is great. So yeah, that card made it in, which is pretty nice, and this is going to be a really strong card because there are actually a lot of wizards in the cube, so this will have a really strong effect. And the fact that it's a morph card is really nice because I don't have a lot of morph cards, but I do have some. So whenever I add a morph card, it's kind of nice because it kind of makes it so that people can't predict what the morph cards are going to be. And the last one I added in was Una's Blackguard. I also remember what card I took out. I took, what is it called? That skeleton card that I actually really liked. It was a tough choice for me to take the skeleton card out. Augur of Skulls. I really like Augur of Skulls, but Una's Blackguard, in my opinion, does more work than the Augur of Skulls, even though I really like it. This card, what I really like is that I actually only have, like, I think in the entire cube, other than this card, I only own one other rogue creature. there's only one rogue creature other than this card in the entire cube. So the ability that affects rogues is probably not really going to do anything. But the second ability, which says whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards card. This card is going to, this ability, right, the bottom ability, is going to get so much mileage because there are tons and tons of cards that use +1/+1 counters in the cube. So I felt like this was going to be a great include, so I definitely wanted to put it. And it's sad that the rogue ability won't get used much, but I think the bottom one is going to make this card an MVP, so I'm excited to see it play out. So I just wanted to show those off because those were recent adds to the cube. I added them like pretty much like the day after I got them, and I just haven't really had the chance to show you guys them actually being in the cube, so that was kind of nice. So now let's get into the green goodness. Man, the job that I went for the interview yesterday, it is a casual piece of shit job going door to door. If I showed up to it today, there was nowhere for me to work. They are over hiring and a joke. Yeah, so like the thing is, Cinder, the other day when you were talking about the job and you were like, oh yeah, like I'm going to be going door to door and like selling like donations or whatever, and I was like, I didn't say anything, but in all seriousness, when I heard you say that, I was like, dude, that is not a good job for you. Like, don't do it. First of all, I got a couple of things to say. First of all, like those jobs will grind you into misery. Like door-to-door jobs like that, they suck so bad, dude. Like that you would not enjoy it at all. And the other thing too, dude, Cinder, is like I know you can do better than that particular kind of work. Like straight up, like you're a good dude, and like I think you're motivated, and like you like doing I get a pretty good idea of the kind of character you are by watching you stream and having conversations, and you're a good dude, and I just don't think that that's like a good job for you, man. Like you can do so much better, man. And I know like you're desperate and all that, but I really think you're going to get through this. You're going to find something that suits you really well and that's going to make you comfortable and that you'll be able to do comfortably and all that. So just keep looking, keep your hopes up, man. But don't go for that door-to-door job. Like, I knew when you told me it was door-to-door, I was like, that's not a good job, dude. Don't do it. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of sketch, dude. So yeah, moving on, we're going to get into this green pile here. And I'm going to be talking about a few different things, because green is probably one of the hardest colors to work with in the cube, with putting stuff in as well as actually playing it. Because green has one weakness that none of the other colors suffer from. And I mean, it's obvious when you think about it because it's true for Magic as in an entirety. Like it's just, this is what it is. This is how the color pie works. Green is the only color that basically has no removal. And that's a major, setback for green. It's a huge deal, and it's hard to work with. And there are some cases of like some green removal and green control, but it's so rare that it makes it a major weakness, and it's hard for people to want to play green. When I titled this "The Beef and the Grief," it's because green has both of that. Is that it's really strong creature wise. Like that's obviously its major strength over all the other colors. But the thing is that the grief being that it's so hard to actually play the color because you barely have any sense of control or protection or anything like that. And it makes it really hard for people to want to play green, especially when they're in the cube, like you see it, like especially working with a cube that uses all sorts of different cards from throughout Magic's history. It's really tough to want to play green when you can, like, you get your pile of green and there's no removal, there's no control, like you just have creatures and creatures and creatures and creatures and creatures, and it's like, well, that's cool and all, like it's nice to have these big fat beef sticks, but I don't have anything to actually legitimately protect myself with. So that's something that's going to be coming up every once in a while that we'll be talking about as we're going through the green pile, because I do have some ways of kind of trying to handle that, and yeah, there you go, Cinder Shadow. You can be a lumberjack. I could see it. It'd be awesome, dude. Chop down some trees, bro Tato. Um, so let's get into this green pile. I don't know if you guys can just simply recognize the art of the card that was on top, but this card's pretty fantastic. So the card that was on top is called Beastmaster's Ascension. This card is from the first Zendikar set, and it is so strong. I kind of told you guys already that I used to own all the Ascensions, but I gave up the white Ascension and the blue Ascension to two different friends. But I have the red one, the green one, and the black one. The black and the green one are in the cube, obviously, and the red one is not because the red one sucks in the cube, because the cube is singleton, so that means the red one does nothing. But Beastmaster Ascension's really a powerful card. This card's ludicrously strong. It's a 3-mana enchantment that says whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. So this card is ridiculous for multiple reasons. First of all, it's a 3-mana enchantment that when it is maxed out on the counters, it gives all creatures +5/+5. But the thing that makes it really ridiculous is it says whenever a creature you control. So, like, that means, like, if I actually have, like, a situation where I put this down and I have 7 creatures on the battlefield and I enter my combat phase and I attack with all 7 of my creatures, they immediately, like, as soon as they attack, they immediately get the +5/+5 bonus because the effect for the Beastmaster Ascension triggers the moment you declare your attacker's step. So, like, you can have, like, your 7 creatures all attacking, and then immediately after declaring your 7 attackers, the enchantment triggers and gives them all +5/+5. This card's really ridiculous. And what's really funny about this card, because, like, I remember cracking this card open in a booster pack, and one of the things that was really funny is that, have you ever had a situation where, like, a card or, like, anything in general seems so good to, like, in your face good, like, it's so good that you kind of refuse to believe that it's a good card, like, or anything like that? This card did this to me. I remember opening this in a booster pack and reading it over several times, and I'm like, why do I feel like this card is bad? Like, where's the catch? What's going on here? And I actually treated this card like it was a bad card for really long. I pretty much never, like, for a large amount of time when I first got it, I pretty much never played it. Ever. Like, I had it, I think I put it in, like, an EDH deck or something, and, like, just kind of forgot about it and didn't really think about it. And then a friend of mine had, like, 2 copies of Beastmaster Ascension, which he ran in a deck. And he ran both of them. And I'll never forget watching him get both of them on the field and getting that +10/+10 bonus, which was ludicrous. It was so ridiculous. And it was like being killed by that, like, in that fashion, gave me a full understanding and scope of, like, how strong this card really was. And it was, like, really strange because, like I said, like, there was a long period of time where I absolutely refused to believe this card was a good card. And it was literally just, it was so good that I couldn't really believe that it was as good as it was. It was such a strange feeling. I don't know how else to explain it, but I remember that really well. This is another really good card. This is Awakening Zone. This is from, I believe it's Rise of the Eldrazi. Awakening Zone is, like, this card is so good. It's like a slightly worse form of Bitter Blossom. And even though this card is worse than Bitter Blossom, this card is still insanely powerful. I love this card. I played it in tons of different things. I played it in commander decks. I played it in, like, a standard deck when I was playing Zendikar. I played it in, it was in a modern deck for a while. This card's amazing. And like I said, like, it's like Bitter Blossom but worse, and even though it's worse than Bitter Blossom, this card is absolutely fantastic. So, like, for 3 mana, which is really easy to achieve in green, it's barely a struggle to get this out. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get to get a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn token, and you can sacrifice that Eldrazi spawn token to gain 1 colorless mana at any time. So, like, This card gets out of control very quick. It builds armies. It creates mana acceleration. It gives you chump blockers. There's all sorts of things where you can boost up your Eldrazi spawn. I actually had a really cool game in the cube not too long ago where I had out I have a batter skull in my collection of artifacts, and my friend, man, it was really funny. My friend was wasting his removal on the cards that were having the batter skull attached to. So like he kept like trying to kill the germ tokens. But like he kept like I think if I remember correctly, the first couple of times he was forgetting that the germ, like getting rid of the germ token didn't get rid of the batter skull. And he was freaking out about it. And I remember having this out with the batter skull and attaching batter skull to, because like it was too risky to send it back to my hand and recast it. So like I was attaching the batter skull to the little Eldrazi spawn tokens, and they were just destroying him. And he was like so angry about it, and he kept trying to get rid of them. But it's like you're wasting all your removal on the tokens. Like you can't do that. It was really funny, and it was like really kind of a moment where it was cool because I actually in that game used the Eldrazi spawn to like mana accelerate things out into play, but I was also using them to like attach Batter Skull to and do other shenanigans, which was like really entertaining because I got to see it from like I got to use it defensively, I got to use it offensively, I got to use it tactically, like for mana acceleration. Like this card's great. It's so good. And I don't really know how expensive it is, but like if you want something that's like Bitter Blossom, like I mean, obviously, like, there's a whole bunch of things that Bitter Blossom does. It makes, flying men, it's in black, it comes out on turn 2, and this card's not going to be able to do that same kind of stuff that Bitter Blossom does. But it really gives you a solid token creating engine that really, really matters. So this card's fantastic in the cube, and I really love it a lot. It does a lot of stuff. Next is the Green Praetor, Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. So, this card is really interesting because it's a big fat beefcake, and it's weird because when you get this guy out, it sometimes feels like that his mana acceleration combined with his mana draining ability, sometimes feel like it's overdoing itself, like it's a win more kind of feeling. But this guy does matter. Like I've actually seen this guy come out multiple times in the cube, simply because I've had him longer than, I've had this guy and Alesh Norn longer than I've had the red, blue, and black Praetor, so they've had more of an impact on the cube. And this guy, his mana abilities usually, like almost every time I've gotten him out, his mana abilities never really matter, but as a big fat 7/6 with trample, he really does matter. Like, that's where he feels good. A 7/6 trampler. Which is kind of weird, because you kind of want the abilities to really matter, but I found that a lot of the time they don't. Like, they really don't. I've heard people tell me that he gets really gross in, like, commander decks and stuff like that. I've never played with this guy in a commander deck of any kind, so I wouldn't be able to have an opinion on that. But based on his ability to be played in the cube, those two abilities those two mana-based abilities don't really ever feel like they matter. But him as a big fat 7/6, he makes a pretty major impact. It's like playing your big fat fatty, like to win you the game. And usually when he comes out, he gets removed a lot, but I've seen games where he sticks around and they get pretty nasty pretty quick. I love this card. This is Might of Old Carosa. This is a really strong 1-mana instant spell. And it's very flexible. It's like, yeah, he is pretty expensive, but I've seen him get out and do things. Like, talking about, Vorinclex. I've seen him come out and do some pretty scary stuff. Anyways, I love this card. I actually think that this card is better than Giant Growth. There are no Giant Growths in my cube, and this is basically the replacement for Giant Growth. This card is fantastic. It's never going to give you +3/+3, but this card moves at instant speed to give a creature +2/+2. And if you play this card during your main phase, the creature you target gets +4/+4 instead. And a lot of the time, like, when I've seen people play pump spells for creatures, like, it is nice to play them defensively on other people's turns, sure. But a lot of the time, people really want that, that extra boost during their turn to get in the final damage to win the game. And Might of Old Carosa is very, very good at doing it. It's very good at doing it. I've seen this card sneak in the last, like, couple of points of damage to kill somebody. This card's fantastic. And I mean, like I said, like, some people might think, like, oh, +4/+4 only during your main phase. That doesn't seem very good. Play with this. Play with this card, and I promise you, you'll see in multiple different ways how this card is so much better than a regular standard giant growth. This card is fantastic. I have like 4 or 5 copies of this card. Some of them are in commander decks. Some I don't think I have any in any like regular 60 card decks of any sort. But I have a couple in some commander decks, and I have this one in the cube, and this card always stands out. It's very, very strong. Definitely try it. It's way better than a giant growth. Next is Joyner Addup. I really like this card. I actually have had this for a very, very long time, since I was a kid, actually. I played very heavily in the Mirrodin block, and I also, so I loved getting cards from Mirrodin, from the Mirrodin block, but I hated playing in the Mirrodin block. Like, I hated playing people in the Mirrodin block because I was actually traumatized by Ravager Affinity. And that was during an early period of my life as a Magic player, so it really kind of tainted some of my nostalgia for playing Magic the Gathering at a young age. It was traumatic. I don't know if any of you guys played during Ravager Affinity. That shit was traumatic, dude. It was not fun. And I actually was really excited when Kamigawa came around and kind of, you know, changed everything. But I did like the cards that I got from Mirrodin and Darksteel and Fifth Dawn. And this is one that I cracked open in a booster as a kid, and I loved it. And it was really funny because it came in and out of all sorts of things. I played it in standard decks. I played it in... I don't think it ever made it into like an actual modern deck, but I put it in all sorts of different commander decks. It's been in and out of all sorts of different things. It's also got a little bit of wear at the top. Like, you can kind of see that it's a little fuzzy at the top. This card's been played a lot. But I love it. It's a 2-mana 2/1, which is great. Like, and then on top of that, it makes all of your lands produce any color of mana. I have seen this played, I think, once in the cube, and it actually has a very significant presence. Like, there are some lands that I have that are very strong in the cube, some of the non-basic lands, but they don't produce mana. Or if they do produce mana, they only produce colorless mana. This girl changes all that. Like, she can turn all sorts of non-basic colorless lands into lands. She basically turns them into, like, you know, like Rupture Spires or you know, a City of Brass that doesn't hurt you. That kind of impact is a big deal because color fixing is super important in the cube. So this girl is fantastic, especially considering you can get her out super duper early. I have seen her come out on turn 1. Like, and it's a big deal. Like, when you see her come out on turn 1, it's a huge, huge deal. This card is pretty fantastic. There's a lot of people who talk about, like, the famous cards that are, like, 2-mana powerhouses. Like, you know, they always want to talk about, like, Snapcaster Mage and Stoneforge Mystic, and the green one is always Tarmogoyf. I would actually say this card is one of those 2-mana powerhouses. Like, this card is amazing for 2 mana and it feels great. Obviously, it's not going to beat face like a Tarmogoyf, but this card has a serious impact on the board as a 2-mana creature. It's a big deal. Next is Rampaging Ballast. This is a mythic from Zendikar that had its power level ramped down over the years. They reprinted it in Iconic Masters. I have a copy of it. and they reprinted it in Iconic Masters as a rare instead of a mythic rare. And I can kind of actually see it. This card does not actually impact the board as heavily as most people would think it does. I have seen people get some pretty good mileage out of this card. I've seen it produce like 2 or 3 big fat fatties. But the thing is that because it's a 6 mana card, the ability of Landfall doesn't hit as hard as you would expect it. Landfall is kind of an interesting ability because it's more effective earlier in the game. Like, obviously, in Zendikar, you could play Landfall anytime because lands were the main theme and you wanted to be playing lands constantly. But that was in that block in particular. That's not the case of the Cube. In the Cube, there are a few different Landfall cards, but all of the Landfall cards really hit the most in the early part of the game. They really, like, Landfall makes a major impact in the early part of the game. But when you get to, like, the later game with, like, Rampaging Ballast, it doesn't feel as impressive. It does feel nice because if you happen to draw a land and it's late game, it feels nice knowing that the land you drew, is not useless because it'll make a 4/4 beast token. So, but it's not as impressive as it used to be. So, but it feels good in the Cube. Like, I actually like it. 6 mana, 6/6 trample. I mean, ignoring landfall, that still feels pretty nice. So, you got your big fat fatty right there. Next is Channel. This is a revised copy. I'm pretty sure it's revised. It's either... I'm pretty darn sure this is a revised copy. I actually own 3 copies of Channel. The other 2 are in Commander decks. This one is obviously in the Cube. They're all revised. I was actually really fine... Like, I've owned these for a while. I was really surprised to find out this card's not very expensive. I'm not sure why it's not very expensive. I mean, I think this card's uncommon. I think it's labeled as an uncommon, so that might have something to do with it. I guess I should explain what this card does for any, newer players who've never seen a Channel. I mean, some of you guys might know the legends of this card, such as, for example, the classic saying Channel Fireball. So basically this card says, let it zoom in a bit. Until end, it's a sorcery for 2 green mana. Until end of turn, you may add colorless mana to your mana pool at a cost of 1 life per point of mana. These additions are played with the speed of an interrupt. Effects that prevent or redirect damage may not be used to counter this loss of life. So basically, you cast this card for 2 mana, and then you may pay any number of your life points. And your life points equals 1 colorless mana per life point. So the classic combo of Channel Fireball is you would basically like it would be a first turn combo, is you play a land. Let's see, you play a mountain, and then you play a Black Lotus, and then you sacrifice your Black Lotus for 3 green, and then you cast Channel, and then you basically create a 1 red for your Fireball, and then 1 green for 1 extra point of damage on the Fireball, and then you sacrifice 19 life points to cast a 20-point Fireball at your opponent on the first turn. So that's the famous combo that this card is infamous for. But, I mean, Channel is still great. It's balanced in the Cube. You don't want to get too crazy with this card. There is Fireball, as you guys remember from the red pile. Fireball is in here. It is technically possible to do a Channel Fireball. I've never seen it happen in the Cube. It'd be interesting to see at least once, maybe, but it's never actually happened. But this card gets pretty crazy. There are plenty of X spells in here, so using a Channel to feed an X spell can be a lot of fun. Also, sometimes it just mana accelerates you to where you need to be, which can be really nice, So, you never know with this card. It's very interesting. I highly recommend it. And if you're playing Singleton in a Cube, which is what my Cube's all about, Channel has some interesting effects. There's nothing significant I can think of where Channel felt broken. But I mean, most of the time in the Cube, it doesn't feel like it makes a huge impact because a lot of the time it's just accelerating towards some kind of spell that you would otherwise play normally in the game. So, I mean, there's nothing really super special about this card that I can remember, but I do know that it has had an effect on the game. Play with it. It's fun. It's balanced. It works. I don't think that if you put it in, I don't think it would be unbalanced. So I highly recommend it. Next is what we in the business like to call Steve. This is Steve. For anybody who doesn't know Steve, his name is Steve because Sakura Tribelder is STE, so stay, but we all call him Steve. This card is really strong. It's really great. One of the famous things, like, people used to use this guy to abuse what was called damage on the stack. He doesn't really get used for that anymore. We play by proper rules. Damage doesn't go on the stack. So he doesn't get to do, stack damage while sacrificing for cards. But it actually feels really nice when you can get Steve on the battlefield and you can chump block him and mana accelerate yourself. So, I mean, this card stands on its own pretty well. And it never feels bad. Like, I actually really like this guy a lot. He can protect you and mana accelerate you, and it's pretty good. Like, I mean, he gets that land into play tapped, so, I mean, it gets to go directly on the battlefield, and you get to use it next turn. So, this guy's pretty awesome. I would highly recommend using him. I actually used to have a counterpart to him, but I recently took it out. There was a card from Innistrad called Dawn Treader Elk, which is a 2-mana 2/2, where you pay a green and you sacrifice it, and it has the same ability as Sakura Tribelder. And that had a pretty good impact on the cube for a long time, but I eventually traded it out for something better. But yeah, Steve himself, I don't think I'll ever be able to take Steve out of the cube. He's really good. He's a very good common card from Kamigawa. I'm going to just assume I chump block and fetch. Yeah, I mean, that's classic. That's the classic way of playing Steve. You chump block and you fetch, and it feels good. Because, I mean, it's like, the way to think about Steve is, it's really nice when you have cards that can immediately replace themselves. Because, like, if you know about the rules of, like, card advantage and things like that, like, there's always the idea of, like, a 1-for-1 and things like that. Like, you have a Steve, somebody Doomblades it. That means your opponent goes down a card and you go down a card. But Steve is one of those cards where, your opponent could Doomblade Steve, and your opponent's down a card and you're down a card, but then you immediately search a basic land and put it directly into play tapped. So that means even after he's been, even after a 1-for-1 situation, you then get to be put ahead one card anyways. So cards that are immediately able to replace themselves after death have a lot of value to them. Like, when I say value, I don't mean monetary value, I mean card value. That's a slang term we old school Magic players used to say. We used to see cards that had, playability value, and we would say, oh god, that card has so much value, like in the sense of it works itself well in the game. So yeah, he has that kind of level of value to him where he is able to replace himself, and he's really nice. Like, he's really good. Like, I love Steve. I have like 5 copies of Steve, all from Kamigawa. I opened booster pack. I told you guys I really loved Kamigawa. I did play during it, and I opened about 5 or 6 of them when I played during Kamigawa, and I have the one in the cube, and it's really nice. You have a few of those a while ago. Yeah, he's nice. I like him. This next card is amazing. This card is Vines of Vastwood. It's from Zendikar. This card is absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. So it's a 1-mana instant speed card that says, with a kicker of 1 green, and it says, target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control this turn. If Vines of Vastwood was kicked, that creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Best blocker ever, Steve wants more equipment. Yes, he does. He's a great card. He's fantastic. Could you imagine, like, attaching, like, an Umezawa's Jeet to him and just going to town? Ugh, so gross. This card is amazing. I like to call this card, like, a green counterspell. Just the fact that I've seen this card played for 1, and I've seen this card played for 2. Like, I've seen this card protect creatures, and I've seen this card win games, like with that +4/+4. This card is absolutely a powerhouse instant. Absolutely powerhouse instant. It's kind of like playing like Might of Old Carosa, but it's better than Might of Old Carosa. And I love Might of Old Carosa, but Vines of Vastwood, this card is amazing. Like, I've seen it stop Doomblades. I've seen it win the last few points of damage needed to win a game. Like, it's such a great card. Like, I highly recommend getting your hands on a copy of this. And because it's a common, I want to say, I don't know if it's had any reprints, but because it's a common, I want to believe it's probably easy to get. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Well, I mean, if you think about it, Steve is a great blocker, but I do understand what you're saying. I love the Kamigawa block too, Wildgoat. I had a lot of fun during it. And the Kamigawa block, I mean, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, the power level was so shitty in Kamigawa, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, if you really truly played in the Mirrodin block, and you were destroyed by Ravager Affinity constantly, and, like, weren't lucky enough to be able to actually play Ravager Affinity, like, the Kamigawa block was refreshing. I really enjoyed it because it felt nice being in a set of, like, a block of the game that didn't feel like it was all built around one deck style. Like, yeah, you had to worry about, Umezawa's Jeet and all that, but I felt like it wasn't as bad as Ravager Affinity. But anyways, yeah, this card's amazing. Please play with it. Like, get your hands on a copy and play with it. This card should be in, like, green for Cube. And, we're talking, like I mentioned, like, Beef and Grief. This card is great for stopping Grief against green. Like, this will help protect your creatures. It'll, it's not going to be removal for green, but this card is going to protect your creatures from problems. Like, it's going to save your butt. It really is. It's going to save you. So definitely play with this, especially if you have green, because you're going to want stuff to protect your green creatures. So shitty that they banned 6 card from the block and 6 card. Well, I think the other card was probably one card for sure was Sensei's Divining Top. That card is broken as shit. I've never owned a Sensei's Divining Top. I played a lot of Kamigawa, but I never got my hands on a Sensei's Divining Top. I don't know why. That was one of the few uncommons I really never opened in a pack for Kamigawa, which really sucks because it's a great card and I would love to have it in the cube, and it's too expensive to really go out and purchase for the cube. I mean, maybe someday, I don't know, we'll see. But it's hard to get your hands on them. It's one of the priciest uncommons I've ever seen. Next is Lowell. This is a copy of Lowell from M25. It was originally printed in Urza Saga. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. Cycling 2. This card's really nice. So obviously it's a fog. It's a slightly more expensive fog. But what makes this card so good is the cycling. So, like, it's either you can prevent combat damage, and that's nice, or it's useless and you can draw a card, which might put you ahead in green. And, card drawing in green, it's not that easy to come by. So, this card makes a pretty big impact for green. Preventing combat damage can save your butt pretty nice. And it can also stop you from, like, losing a game or whatever. But the cycling for 2 is also very significantly strong on this card. It's very, very useful. I had other prevent combat damage cards, but they didn't really have as much of a major impact as Lowell did. I felt like Lowell was either definitely being casted or it was being cycled. And the other prevent combat damage cards that I had didn't feel as useful. They would either get held on to too long or they would just not work right, or whatever. So having the option between preventing combat damage or drawing a card is what really makes this shine. It's the ability to do one or the other. Jeet Top Glimpse of Nature Memory Jar? Memory Jar. I thought wasn't Memory Jar Urza's Saga? Glimpse of Nature. Mind blanking on the other two. I don't... 6 cards from the block in Modern. I thought Memory Jar was Urza's Saga, or is it Urza's Destiny? Memory Jar. That's weird. I don't know about that one. I don't think Memory Jar was from... I don't think Memory Jar was printed in Kamigawa. Memory Jar is like Urza's Destiny, dude. And the thing is about Memory Jar, they actually preemptively banned that, like, right as they released the card in Urza's Destiny. Like, they emergency banned it because they knew it was going to be broken. I don't know what Glimpse of Nature is. That doesn't sound familiar to me. Cycle Fog seems good. Yeah, it's Lowell is great. Alright, he's going to Google. I really like this card, Krause Tusker, and it's a foil. This is from M25, and it's a foil. I own multiple different copies of Krause Tusker. I own an original print, which is, I think that's, God, I always forget the name of that block. Not Scourge. Scourge was the little wolf face. I'm blanking on where this set is from. Anyways, but I own a copy, I own like 3 or 4 different copies of this card, and all of them are different. But this one's my favorite because it's foil and it has like the little set symbol on it, you know, the one that I can't remember the name of. This card's amazing. 9 times out of 10, you're never going to cast this card. Like, that's just what it's all about. Like, you're 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to cycle this guy for 3 so that you can search your library for a basic land and also draw a card, which has amazing value for 3. Like, searching for a basic land you need and also drawing card for 3 mana, and it's cycling so you can do it at instant speed, is absolutely fantastic on this card. It's absolutely amazing. I don't think I've ever seen this guy cast at full cost as a creature, but it's nice knowing that it can do that. Like, I love cards that do multiple things on the same card. That's like one of my favorite things that cards can do. Like, I'm a big fan of cards like the charms and things like that. Like, you know, like Is It Charm, Dimmer Charm, Funeral Charm, Ebon Charm, you know, things like, you know, Fury Charm, all the charm cards, because they all do tons and tons of different things. So whenever even cards like this, even though this isn't a charm, this is a card that has 2 different forms of being played. You can either play it as a creature if you're desperate, or you can cast it as an instant that's going to mana accelerate you and draw you a card. So I love cards that do multiple different things, because in my opinion, like, the cube is always 420 cards. You can own, like, you know, and the thing is that knowing that there are cards that can do multiple things, it's kind of like you're exceeding your 420 card limit, because it's like, this is 2 cards in 1 instead of just 1 card. And that's why I love cards that do that kind of stuff. So this is an amazing card. I would actually really recommend getting a copy of this card and playing with it in a cube. It's fantastic. The watermark is cool. Yeah, I mean, I know M25 was kind of a dumpster fire set, but I love the M25 cards with the watermarks. I think that's really cool. I like cards with watermarks. I think they're fun, you know, and I think that kind of adds like a little flair to them, so it's fun. Next is Kazandu Tuskcaller. So, there's some interesting stuff about this card. This card has been in and out of this cube about 2 or 3 times. I actually only just recently put it back into the cube. And one of the things that made me realize that I wanted it back in the cube is I now have Intruder Alarm in the cube. And Intruder Alarm makes it so that you can make infinite elephant tokens with this, which is a big deal. I mean, you know, infinite elephant tokens, that sounds pretty nice. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted this guy. But this guy's come in and out of the cube multiple times. It's hard to play this card. It actually is. Like, it doesn't seem like it would be hard to play, but it is. Knowing that, you know, you're going to have to pay 4 mana, like, you're going to, actually 6 mana. So you're going to have to pay 2 mana to get her out, and then you're going to have to pay 4 mana to level her up twice, so that way you'll be able to make elephant tokens. And my best friend played this a couple of times, and he didn't like it because he felt like it was underpowered for the price that you're paying. Because, like I said, it's an investment of 6 mana, so that makes it kind of tough. But I really think that this is going to have. I really think that I want to trust my instincts and keep it in the cube and let it play out the way that it should play out. And maybe eventually someday there will be a cool game where it gets to come out with Intruder Alarm. You never know. I would love to see this played with Intruder Alarm and somebody getting an infinite number of elephant tokens. That might be really fun. So it's back in the cube. I don't think I'm ever going to take it out again. And I should say the 6+ ability never happens. I mean, it's cool that it's there, but it never happens. I've seen this girl come out a couple times. I've seen her get to level 2. I've seen her make a few elephant tokens. I've seen her die a lot. I've never seen her to get 6 tokens, 6 level up tokens to make 2, 3 threes. I've never seen it. But you never know. Maybe. Blazing Shoal. I don't recognize that card either. Okay, so next is Wolfer Silverheart. This card is so stupid strong. This card is basically a 5 mana 8/8, which is ridiculous. So you get this guy out, and it does more than just be a 5 mana 8/8, obviously. But, I mean, knowing that it comes out as a 5 mana 8/8 9 times out of 10, it's so strong. It's ridiculous. So it says basically it has Soul Bond, and it and the creature it's bonded to get +4/+4. So the Wolfer Silverheart is going to come out as an 8/8. And anything you bond it with is going to get +4/+4, which is a pretty ridiculous thing. If you think about it, it's going to be, let's see, 4, 8, 12. So this is 5 mana for 12 power. 12 power and 12 defense. Ridiculous. I don't know where you're going to find cards that give you that much power for that much mana. I mean, I've seen some, like I showed you guys that white card that makes a whole bunch of soldier tokens and then boosts them all by +1/+1 and gives vigilance. That card's pretty ridiculous. This card is stupid good. It's so stupid good. It's a big fat fatty that makes other creatures big fat fatties. You can change the bonding every time, like, you bring in a new creature or whatever. And it's only 5 mana. It's stupid. Like, this card is ridiculous. Like, amazing big fat green fatty. Like, it's ridiculous. Next is Mistcutter Hydra. I've not seen this guy come out yet. This is a recent add to green. I really liked this card a lot, and I had a major struggle getting it in the cube. I remember I had to take something really good out to get this guy in. But I really want it to be good, and I think it will be. This card spits on blue. And I really want to see it do that, because blue is really strong, and blue needs to be, checked more often. So I think that this card is actually going to be really amazing for green against blue. It can't be countered. It has haste, which is ridiculous. It has protection from blue, and it's a big fat XX Hydra. Crazy, scary, powerful card that shuts down blue. And I really want to see it do it. So, I mean, I haven't seen it do it yet, but I really think that it will have an opportunity to do so. So I'm really excited to actually see it get out and start messing everything up. Next is Mycoloth. I adore this card. I've had this card for a long time. I opened this up in a booster pack. So, Mycoloth is crazy strong. It's basically, so it's a 5 mana 4/4 with Devour, and for anybody who doesn't know the Devour mechanic, it basically says, Devour 2, by the way. For anybody who doesn't know the mechanic of Devour, when you are casting this card, it's literally as you're casting it. You may choose to sacrifice any number of creatures you control, and for every creature you control that you sacrifice, this card gets 2 +1/+1 counters for every one creature you sacrifice, which is really strong. And then it has it's a 4/4 to start with, so a 5 mana 4/4, and you devour for 2 for each one creature you get 2. It's very common for this guy to come out as a 6/6 or an 8/8. He doesn't usually get much bigger than 6/6 or 8/8. I've never seen him get bigger than that. But it's really nice because in addition to that, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 green sapperling creature into play for each +1/+1 counter on Michaeloth. So, like, you can cast him as a 5 mana 6/6, and every upkeep he's going to make you 2 sapperling tokens. And like I said, I've seen him get to be a 6/6 and an 8/8. So, generally, more often, he'll come out and start making 2 sapperlings a turn, but it's amazing when he makes 4 sapperlings a turn. And I've never seen him get bigger than that, but he's very scary. This guy's very, very scary. He's a big fat fatty, and I've never really seen people feel bad about sacking their creatures to him, as long as they can get the upkeep ability off at least once. This guy is very prone to removal, though. That's why people get really antsy about sacking creatures. But like I said, most people, like, what they'll do is they'll build up a nice board state. They'll have, like, maybe 1 or 2 creatures they're willing to throw away to Michaeloth. And then that way, if Michaeloth gets hit with removal, they don't feel bad because they didn't sacrifice their entire board state, you know? And maybe sometimes they'll get, like, 4, maybe, they'll get 2 or 4 sapperlings if Michaeloth can last 1 or 2 turns or so. So this card's awesome. It feels pretty good. I mean, like I said, he's prone to removal, but usually it doesn't feel absolutely terrible if he does get removed. Great card. I've seen some pretty amazing stuff happen with that guy. Oh, and one more thing I want to talk about. I love the art for this card. So this is a Raymond Swanland piece, and it's probably one of my favorite Raymond Swanland pieces of all time. Raymond Swanland has a particular art style that I absolutely adore. He loves playing with light in his art. And I don't think I've ever seen a piece of Raymond Swanland art that plays with light as much as this card does. The thing I love is you have the light coming in from the top, and his flesh is semi-transparent. So, like, you can see, like, his bones inside his skin, and you can see the light passing through the arms and things like that. And, like, even his body down here has light passing through it. I love it. Beautiful piece of art. It's actually very intimidating, too, because he's, like, this big, scary fungus creature, and he's coming at you. But I love how Raymond Swanland plays with the light in this art in particular. It's really beautiful and interesting to see the light passing through his skin. I love it. It's, like I said, it's probably one of my favorite Raymond Swanland pieces that I've ever seen, which is one of the reasons why I love that card so much. I was calling Choice of Damnation Memory Jar because of the artwork. Choice of Damnation. I don't know that one. It's not banned, but remember, it's broken in Modern. Okay. I don't know that card. Next is Krause Tusker. This card is an absolute obscene green powerhouse. This is, once again, one of those cards where, like, this card's amazing because it puts you ahead when it enters the battlefield, and it puts you further ahead when it goes away. Like, this card is one of green's purest definitions of pure card advantage. It's ridiculous. You pay 5 mana for 5 power, which is amazing. You gain 5 life when it enters the battlefield, which is amazing. And then you get a 3/3 when it dies. So it immediately replaces itself. This card is an obscene powerhouse of a card. I used to have a really nasty mono green deck a long time ago that had, I can't remember the name of the card, but it had this creature that was like a 4 mana 4/4 green creature. And it said, at the beginning of your upkeep, return a card to your hand, return a creature you control to your hand. And you would do that at the beginning of your upkeep, but you would do it with Krause Tusker. So, like, you would bring Krause Tusker back to your hand, and, like you would play it, gain 5 life, wait a turn, attack with it, then the next turn, like, you would return it to your hand, get a 3/3, cast it again, gain 5 life, and you would just do that, like, every single turn. It was so ridiculous. But yeah, like, it's... And there are some flicker effects in this cube, too, so, like, you could potentially do stuff like that, like gaining 5 life, gaining 3/3s, bringing them back and forth in and out of the battlefield. This guy's crazy, crazy strong. I would definitely recommend playing this in green. It's an absolute green powerhouse. Like, it's just ridiculous how strong this card is. Awesome, awesome card. And it's not expensive. Not at all. I don't think anybody really plays with it anymore, but that's one of the cards where I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if green can get so, like, because we've had a lot of power creep, but I haven't really seen, like, and there's people who will be like, oh, Questing Beast is ridiculous, but I don't think that there is any form of green power creep that I've seen that quite compares to this particular card. This card is like, I think this card's going to be really strong for a very, very long time. Even if it is in the past and people have forgotten about it, this card is still really amazing for mono green, and I think that, you know, it'll keep being strong. Moving on. Wickerbough Elder. This guy is from Morningtide. I have like 4 or 5 copies of this guy. This guy's amazing. He's a 4-mana 4/4 that enters the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter, which might seem bad. But the ability to pay a green, remove the -1/-1 counter, and you can destroy an artifact or enchantment, makes this guy an absolute, like, important piece of removal in this cube for green. The enchantments and artifacts in this cube, I can't say it more than enough. Like, the enchantments and artifacts in this cube are so scary and strong. You need to have removal for them. And this card is a fantastic form of green removal for enchantments and artifacts. Like, you know, like, it destroys the Abyss. It destroys Nether Void. It can destroy Propaganda. It can destroy Curse of Exhaustion. It can destroy like Umezawa's Jeet, you know? Like, there's so many broken artifacts and enchantments in this cube that you have to remember that you need to have your removal. And this is an absolutely fantastic form of green enchantment and artifact removal. So I highly recommend playing with this card. It's fantastic. Like, use it. Use this card. It's great. Next is Protean Hydra. So, this is the only copy of Protean Hydra I have. I was actually surprised to find out that this was originally a mythic rare. And then it was reprinted as a rare because they just realized that it was not as strong as what they thought it was going to be. It was printed as a mythic rare in a core set, I think, and this is another core set printing of it, but then they downgraded it to regular rare. This card's awesome. I've seen some pretty funky stuff happen with this guy. For anybody who doesn't know, it's got the classic green and X, which is like a Hydra should be. It says, when Protean Hydra, Protean Hydra enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, if damage would be dealt to Protean Hydra, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters from it. Whenever a +1/+1 counter is removed from Protean Hydra, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. So this guy will gradually get bigger and bigger so long as it stays alive, and you got to keep in mind that if he runs out of he'll never ever take direct damage, but if he runs out of +1/+1 counters, he will die. Like, that's just how it works. But guess what? You can break that. Do you remember, like, the card that we saw earlier, like, what was it? Beastmaster Ascension? So if you have Beastmaster Ascension out in play, and it's giving all of your creatures +5/+5, this guy right here, Protean Hydra, will never die. Like, it just won't die. Well, I mean, I guess you can hit it with removal. Yeah, because it's only based on damage. So it can still die to, like, destruction and stuff like that. But based specifically on damage, anything that deals damage, whether it's burn, whether it's combat damage, whatever, if you have an enchantment or something, or whatever, that can give Protean Hydra at least 1 point of defense, he will never die to damage, ever. So, like, if you have Beastmaster Ascension out with +5/+5, he will never die. he will just get bigger and bigger and bigger unless you hit him with removal. There's also other cards that give +1/+1 in this. Like, for example, there's the white card, Spear of Heliod, for example. That gives him +1/+1. He will never die to damage. So he's kind of like a little combo. Like, you only need one other card that can give him a defensive boost. But if you do, like, he won't die to damage. It's really cool. Next is Rancor. This card is obscenely powerful. I have seen this card win games on its back. Like, obviously you need another creature to, like, do it. But I have seen games won with this card. Specifically in the cube, very frequently. I had a game where I was fighting my best friend, and I got I was able to play in the first turn, like, all the cards in the first turn. Because, mind you, like, there's obscene amounts of mana acceleration in this cube. I one time had a game where I played, on the first turn, a Step Lynx and Rancor on the Step Lynx, all on the first turn. And then the very next turn, I was able to basically attack for, I was able to attack for 4 every single turn after the first turn. And it was so oppressive. Like, I was constantly killing his little guys. I was able to keep the control on, and, like, I was removing his scary threats. I was able to control his mana flow. I killed him with a Step Lynx with Rancor. It was ridiculous. And that's the coolest... Like, I mean, Rancor gets pretty obscene with other things as well, but I will never forget that game where I got Step Lynx and Rancor on the very first turn, and then murdered him by, like, I think he was dead by, like, turn 5 or 6. It was crazy. So this card is absolutely, absolutely powerful. Do not question the power of Rancor. For anybody who doesn't know, I've been talking so heavily about it, but not saying what the card does. It's a 1-mana green enchantment that says +2/+0. Enchanted creature has +2/+0 and trample. If it is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may return Rancor to your hand. This card never goes away. It's obscenely strong for green mana. Like, it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. This card is oppressive. It's just nasty. You can kill people very quickly with this card. And like I said, it never goes away. Yeah, you're right, Wild Goat. It was really rude. But it's so strong. And I actually own like 4 or 5 copies of this card. I can't remember exactly, but I own quite a few. Some of them are in binders, some of them are in decks. But this one is my favorite. And the reason why is because it has, like, other than the original print of Rancor, which I sadly don't have, this is the only copy of Rancor I have that still has the flavor text on it, which is, like, one of the best parts of this card, which says, "Hatred outlives the hateful." And the flavor text is so perfect on this card, and it's the only copy I have of Rancor that still has the flavor text on it, which is why I use this copy instead of any of the other 5 or 6 copies I have of the card. But very, very strong, oppressive, brutal, nasty card. It's fantastic. Next is Champion of Lambolt. This guy's a recent ad. I don't really know how I feel about this card yet. Because I haven't seen it play. It's fairly new. Nobody's played with it yet. But I feel like it's pretty strong. So it's 3 green mana for a 1/1. Human warrior. Let's see if it'll... Please zoom. Please focus. There it is. Creatures with power less than Champion of Lambolt's power can't block creatures you control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Champion of Lambolt. So... it might seem kind of lame that it's a 3-mana 1/1, but I feel like that it will get pretty big pretty quick. It messes around with +1/+1 counters, which is always really nice. And it also says that creatures with power less than Champion of Lambolt, like as it gets bigger, those creatures cannot block all your creatures. So, like, the bigger she gets, the more likely that your creatures are going to be unblockable. So, and I like that because it's kind of hard to get stuff in green that allows your creatures to come in and, you know, not be bothered by whatever. So this basically creates like this card as it grows creates evasion for all your creatures, and I feel like that's really strong in green. So even though I haven't seen this card played yet, I think it'll probably be pretty darn good in the cube. Hey Helex, good to see you, dude. Thanks for coming in. We're just kind of going through green. I'm actually really slow rolling these cards. I should probably pick up the pace a bit. Next is Garruk the Wild Speaker. I like this card. Me and my friends together, we opened like 3 or 4 copies of this guy. This is the only one I had. Well, the only one I have now. I actually used to own like 2 copies of Garruk the Wild Speaker, and that's what it was. Remember a while ago I was saying that I got my hands on a copy of I have my Elspeth, and I couldn't remember what I traded to get Elspeth. I just remembered I traded my other Garruk Wild Speaker for Elspeth. That's how I got Elspeth. I traded Garruk the Wild Speaker. So I own 2 copies of it, and my friend at that time was like, "Well, dude, you own 2 copies. Like, I'll give you like my Elspeth for one of the copies of Garruk." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I keep calling him Garruk, but I think it's Garruk. I'm still not used to calling him that, but that's probably the right way to call him. But anyways, so yeah, I traded my other copy of Garruk the Wild Speaker for Elspeth. And I don't regret it because I love Elspeth more than I like Garruk. But this card is great. He can technically mana accelerate you. He can make little beasties to protect you and himself. And he also can give creatures +3/+3 and trample as a final ability, which is actually pretty nice in green. So this guy's really good. He's very, very good. I would play with him. I mean, I'm sure there's better planeswalkers, but I like him. He does just fine. Like, he's pretty darn strong. I've never felt bad about playing him. I've never seen anybody else feel bad about playing him. He's good. I don't think he's expensive, though, so you might be able to get him pretty easily. He's the original Garruk, so that's kind of cool, too. I mean, he's not the first printing of Garruk, but he is the original Garruk. Like, he's like the, Garruk the Wild Speaker, and there's been like other versions of him as time has gone on. He's the original version of himself, even though I think he's like the 3rd or 4th printing of the card itself. All right. Indrik Stomphowler. This is a Indrik Stomphowler from Dissension. This card is fantastic. This card has actually really changed games in my favor. There's one in particular I remember really well. I was playing a game where my friend had propaganda out on the field, and which was really tough to deal with. And I managed to land a 9-mana Entwined copy, which you guys will see eventually. I managed to land a 9-mana Entwined Tooth and Nail. And I remember I got my hands on Darksteel Colossus, and the other card I got was Indrik Stomphowler. And so I managed to get both of them out of my deck and directly into play through Tooth and Nail. So what I did was I had Darksteel Colossus for the board presence, because he's big and scary. And Indrik Stomphowler got rid of the propaganda and opened up the board so that I could swing in for the win. So that particular memory about this card makes me realize how good it is. So, I mean, Indrik Stomphowler, it's just kind of like all the other forms of removal. Like, you're going to want it to remove something. Like I said, like I used it to remove propaganda and come in for the win. So I would highly recommend this one. I really like this guy because he's 5 mana. He's a 4/4 that destroys artifacts or enchantments. That 4/4 body does matter. Like, it does matter. It feels great. So, I mean, I would recommend playing with this guy. He's awesome. And like I said, like, it's that one particular memory of getting him out to destroy the propaganda to open up the board for me that allowed me to win the game and totally own with the Darksteel Colossus that I also tutored up. So definitely play with this guy. He's fantastic. Oh, I love this card. Krause Grip. So Krause Grip is famous for being one of the single strongest forms of artifact and enchantment removal. My first pick for fun, very nice. Yeah, Indrik Stomphowler is a big fat reclamation sage. I really like the Stomphowler. I think he's awesome. But yeah, this card right here is considered to be one of the single most powerful forms of artifact enchantment removal ever printed, ever. People say it's an auto include in green commander decks, which I do have a few different copies that are in commander decks, but this one is the original. It's an original Time Spiral print, and it's in the cube, and it's amazing. For example, like one of my favorite things about Krause Grip, it will destroy, it will completely annihilate things like Umezawa Jeet. So, like, for example, if you target Umezawa Jeet with a normal form of removal, people can use the counters in response to do something. But Krause Grip says, "Nuh-uh, you don't get to use those counters. It's gone." And another thing is, like, for example, like I told you guys I have a Batterskull. This guy says no to Batterskull. Like, Batterskull would be like, oh, well, I'm going to pay 3 mana to return it. And Krause Grip says, nuh-uh, you can't do it. You're not allowed to do it. It's the split second that really, really matters. It absolutely shuts things down and says, no, no, no. You don't get to do anything else. It's gone. Accept the fact that it's gone. It's gone. You don't get to use it. Stop it. Like, that's what makes this card so powerful, is it just says, no. Stop doing your sneaky shenanigans. Get rid of the artifact or enchantment. There's nothing you can do to save it. And that's what makes this card so absolutely powerful. It's super important. Probably the most powerful form of artifact enchantment removal in the entire cube. Green-white for maximum entertainment, possibly. Green-black for maximum value and opportunity to come back from the bad situations. Yeah, I feel that. Next is a powerhouse from Ixalan. This card's awesome. I really like this card a lot. It's Tendershoot Dryad. This is a lot of bang for your buck. It's ridiculous. It's one of the... I think it's the only card from this particular Ixalan set that I have in the entire cube. You guys should probably know this card pretty well. It was really strong for a long time on Arena. It's been played in a bunch of different standard decks when this was in standard. Tendershoot Dryad, it's a 5-mana, 2/2, there it is. And it has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of each upkeep, at the beginning of each upkeep, yours and the opponent's, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. Saplings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have City's Blessing. So even without the City's Blessing ability, this card is really strong. It's going to produce saplings every single upkeep, not just yours, which makes it so crazy strong in green. I really like this card. It's very strong. It's built up board states. I have seen the Ascend go off multiple times, which is really strong. Just a great card, like a really, really good card. I don't know if it's expensive or not. This one I cracked in a booster. I actually remember this was a card that I opened in a booster and I thought that it was not really good. Turns out it's great. I remember opening in a booster and I'm like, I don't like this card. And then I was like, what was I thinking when I said I didn't like this card? This card's amazing. Great, powerful green card. Yes, it's very powerful in multiplayer, Wrath of Wood. It's stupid. I want to believe that it's probably a popular pick in Commander. Next is I believe this is a revised Fast Bond. This card's amazing. If you guys don't know what Fast Bond does, it's really strong. So basically, the most amazing thing about Fast Bond is getting it out in the first 2 or 3 turns. This card's great. You put it out for a green mana, and then you can put any number of lands into play for 1 life per land. So, like, you pay a life, you put a forest into play. You pay, obviously you can put your first land out for free, but after your first free land, you can put all your lands into play, but you have to pay 1 life for every land. I've gotten this out on the first, 2 turns, and I remember dumping all my lands into play, and my friend was, playing against me, and he had, 2 lands in play on turn 2. Meanwhile, I'm over here, and I have, 6 lands in play on turn 2, or something like that. It's really good. This card is something where, you're never going to kill somebody with it, but it's going to get you where you need to be able to kill somebody very quickly early in the game. Great, great card. Next is Harmonize. I really love this card. This is a 4-mana green sorcery that draws 3 cards. It's very plain. It's very simple. There's not much you need to really know about it because it's for 1 card, it's gaining you 3 cards. So, like, that's a +2 card advantage for this one spell. This card is really, really strong, especially in green. It's ridiculously strong. Now, I will admit, I actually wish I owned the original print from Planar Chaos, but I don't have the original print from Planar Chaos. And I really want to get it because it's got that fancy border. But, I mean, I'm also okay with just having this one particular copy. It's got Garruk in the background there, touching the earth and all that, which is kind of neat. So, I mean, this card's great. Like, I've seen it draw, like, 3 cards in green, and that feels amazing. Like, it's, it's awesome. My first choice is black with white for better utility. As long as it's not blue, I still respect you. You guys are hilarious. This card's pretty amazing. This is Regrowth. Regrowth is incredibly, incredibly strong. It's a 2-mana sorcery that says return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, I don't really know what to say too much about this card, except for the fact that it's incredibly strong. Return any card you want from your graveyard to your hand is a very, very strong ability. This card is fantastic. I mean, I don't really know what I can truly say about this card because, it's going to gain you, I mean, you can cast Time Walk, and then you can cast Regrowth and gain Time Walk back. You can cast Ancestral Recall and cast Regrowth and gain Ancestral Recall back. You can we just showed Harmonize. Cast Harmonize, regrow the Harmonize. There's so many things this card can do. It's ridiculous. It's a very, very strong card. Now, obviously, this ain't no alpha, beta, revised, or unlimited print, but this is a pretty nice print. I'm okay with the art. I really like it. And the card is just really strong. I mean, if you have a chance to get your hands on a Regrowth, you should definitely play with it in a cube. It's a very, very strong card. Flavor text is kind of nice. While the root remains, the tree yet lives. I also really like this art because what's really interesting is a lot of the Regrowth cards, cards that involve returning cards from your graveyard, have references to the original Regrowth art, and which involves light and trees and things like that. So if you actually look over and also even cards that have Regrowth abilities, you'll see that they have art that is similar to the original Regrowth art, which is kind of cool. It's nice to be able to reference stuff like that. Next card is obscenely powerful card. This is Yavimaya Elder. This card is so powerful. It's a 3-mana 2/1 that says when Yavimaya Elder is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library. And then tap 2 mana, sacrifice Yavimaya Elder, draw a card. This card is so strong. It's so strong. And even the original printing of it was common, which is ridiculous. This card gives you a +3 card advantage when it dies if you choose to sacrifice it. So if you sacrifice it, it gives you which you can do. You can chump block with it and pay 2 mana. And then gain a +3 advantage. And if you're in a situation where you don't get to sacrifice it and gain that +3 advantage, even if it dies, it's still going to give you a +2 advantage. It's going to get you 2 lands out of your deck. This card is obscenely strong. I have no idea, because I think the original print was from a much older set. I think it was I don't know, Mercadian Masks or something like that. I can't remember when it was originally printed. But, I don't know what they were thinking when they made this card. It's so strong. It's ridiculous. Remember we were talking about Steve, and I was saying about how obscenely strong is Steve? This is, the better Steve. This is, Steve if Steve was, 100 times more powerful than he already is. This card is so crazy, stupid, retarded strong. If you find a way, I think it's actually kind of an expensive common. I can't remember, but if you get your hands on a copy of it, you have to play this in a cube. This card is so it's so strong. Like, just play with it. It's so strong. Helfer Gamer says, "Oh my god!" And it's a common. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It was a common in the original set it was printed in, and then when they repeatedly printed it, which is, I think it's only been reprinted in Commander sets, they kept printing it as a common, and in my opinion, I gotta tell this to people, because people often freak out about rarity symbols in Commander sets. Rarity in a Commander set means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Because there are no multiple copies in a Commander set. Everything is singleton. So, like, printing a card in a Commander set is common versus printing a card in a Commander set as mythic rare, they have the same rarity. Because they both are consistently single copies in a singular deck. So, like, but the thing, it's the mythic, like the common and uncommon and rare and mythic rare matter in booster packs and things like that. Like, they don't actually matter in Commander sets. But it was printed, I think that what they do is whatever set it was printed in originally as, in what rarity symbol it was originally, is how they usually reprint it in Commander sets. And that, like I said, in a Commander set, that rarity doesn't actually mean anything. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually were brave enough, if they were legitimately brave enough to reprint Yavimaya Elder. Oh, I'm Wild Goat. I was like, what? I understand. Whatever. I don't care. I ain't no PC. Get out of here. I think if they were brave enough to reprint this card, it would probably be a high-tier uncommon. Like, and when I say high-tier uncommon, I'm talking about the uncommons that they, like, it would be an uncommon at the rarity of Fatal Push, where they barely ever print Fatal Push. It's uncommon, but it's got a higher rarity in the uncommon slot. So I think if they were brave enough to reprint this card, it would be a high-tier uncommon card. Because it's not strong enough to be a rare, but it's definitely strong enough to be a high-tier uncommon. Aspect of Mongoose. This card's so powerful. So Rancor, we were talking about Rancor, and one of the things that makes Rancor so strong is that whenever it goes into a graveyard from the battlefield, you get to return it to your hand. So Aspect of Mongoose basically gives a creature you control Shroud, but also if that creature were to die somehow, this card comes back to your hand. So, like, for example, this is a card where you will not be 2-for-1, just like Rancor. Rancor, you'll never be 2-for-1. This card is obscenely strong. You could put it on one of your big fat fatties and be comfortable in the fact that your big fat fatty will no longer be a subject to removal. I mean, sacrifice effects? Sure. Like, yeah, sacrifice effects will, make a problem for you, sure. But, like, if people want to remove your creature, they're going to have to find a way to remove the Aspect of Mongoose first. And even after they remove the Aspect of Mongoose, the Aspect of Mongoose is just going to come right back to your hand. Because as long as the only way to really deal with this card is to counter it. So, like, people are going to see the Aspect of Mongoose and they'll have to respond with a counter, because once it comes down, you're in trouble. So this card's really good. This is another what I was talking about with the beef or grief. The beef and grief, I mean. This will prevent grief in green. Because you want to protect your beef. So you put this down on your beef, and then you don't have to worry about grief. So, that's what makes this card so good. I mean, like I said, you're going to have a lot of trouble because green is weak in the sense that you're not going to get much removal. But at least you can find comfort in the fact that there are cards that are going to protect your creatures from removal. And this is one of them. Next is Eternal Witness. This is another one. This is, like, remember I was saying in the art of Regrowth, they like to use the light trick and all that with the green magic and stuff. Eternal Witness is a card with art that actually references that. I really love how it has like all the light and stuff like that. So, ignoring that, this card is a ludicrously strong green card. It basically is a regrowth on a stick. It is a 3 mana 2/2. A 3 mana 2/1 that says when Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This card is obscenely strong. There are flicker effects in the cube, and this card is scary strong with a flicker effect. Regrowth is already a strong card. I was saying how strong it was. Imagine a regrowth you can use over and over again. That's what this guy does. And it's so crazy strong for a card of what it does. Definitely get your hands on this. I prefer the Therese Nielsen art. I know that they recently redid the art for Eternal Witness, and I actually think that the new art for Eternal Witness is actually kind of ugly. I'm not a fan of it, but the original Therese Nielsen Eternal Witness art is absolutely beautiful. She's a very fine-looking little elf lady, human lady, I'm sorry. She's a very fine-looking human lady, and there's also plenty of references to the original regrowth art, which is what makes it so nice. So great card. Next is, that's not the card you're supposed to see yet. Next is Elvish Piper. This card's pretty crazy strong. This little lady, sadly, is the subject of so much removal. I've seen this card played so many times, but I don't think I have ever seen her last more than one turn. I'm thinking really hard, and I really can't think of any game where she has been able to last more than a single turn. This card it gets killed immediately, almost every single time. So Elvish Piper is a 4 mana 1/1, and it says it's an elf shaman, and it says you tap a green and you tap her, and you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. This card can cheat so many powerful cards into play, it's ridiculous. But like I said, she sadly has never lasted more than a turn, ever. And I mean, that's probably good. That's probably a good thing. Like I said, you gotta have your removal, and there is a balance to the cube, and how, there's kind of a political sort of thing that happens with the cube and how removal functions. And you'll find, like I said in the previous stream, that the big scary creatures usually don't last very long, and the little guys are really what makes the cube powerful. So you have to be really good with your little guys. But this is an example of a card that basically doesn't really ever... It gets played all the time, I promise you it does. But it doesn't really get to make a board difference. It usually dies really quick. By the way, beautiful, beautiful Rebecca Guay art. Rebecca Guay is one of my favorite Magic artists, and this art is absolutely beautiful. I love it. Just absolutely beautiful. Love Rebecca Guay. Next is the card that I showed by accident. This is Genesis from Judgment. It's a 5 mana 4/4, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if Genesis is in your graveyard, you may pay 3 mana. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, 4 mana. Let's get an answer out of your hand. Yeah, that's exactly right, Hellx. That's exactly what it feels like getting Elvish Piper is like. It's more of I'm going to remove your removal. It's pretty funny because it's super true. This card is awesome. It's like it's like an enchantment a lot of the time. It is nice to get that 4/4 body out on the field, but once it dies, you get to regrowth creature. Well, I guess it's not regrowth. It's only green creatures. But it basically allows you to pay 3 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can pay 3 mana and get a creature back from your graveyard and put it into your hand, and that's pretty nice. Especially because we were just talking about how Elvish Piper gets removed. Like, maybe you play an Elvish Piper and it gets removed, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you have Genesis in your graveyard, and you get Elvish Piper back, and then maybe you get to cast it and hopefully keep it. You never know. Genesis is awesome. I've seen this guy do some pretty funky stuff. It is nice when you get to know that sometimes removal doesn't actually remove your biggest threat, and Genesis is very, very good at doing that. Next is Sylvan Library. This is a proxy. This is not a real Sylvan Library. It would be cool to have a real Sylvan Library, but I don't. But this is a proxy. This card is very complicated. And we also have some special rules tied to this card, and it's important. If there was ever, let me tell you guys something. If there was ever a card that needs rules designed for it, like you have to literally make rules in your game for how this card works, this is a card that needs it. And I'll explain why if you guys have never seen a Sylvan Library and how it functions. So let's see if I can get it to zoom. It's a 2-mana enchantment. Let's see. Come on, focus. Come on, you can do it. Come on. Come on. Zoom out and then bring it back in. Okay, so you know what? I'm just going to read it because my camera is not letting me focus. So it's a 2-mana enchantment that says, you may draw 2 extra cards during your draw phase. Then either put 2 of the cards drawn this turn back on top of your library in any order, which is important, or lose 4 life per card that... Okay, the wording on this card is very weird. Or lose 4 lives per card not replaced. Effects that prevent or redirect damage may not be used to counter this loss of life. Okay, so basically what this card does is it's basically going to say, at the beginning of your upkeep, is it your upkeep or is it your draw phase? I'm sorry, at the beginning of your draw phase, you draw 3 cards. You draw your first card, and then you may choose to draw 2 extra cards. But then you get to, you draw the cards, which is important to know because of how this, in order to make rules for this card, it's important. It says you draw 2 cards, and then you may choose to either pay 4 life per card. Oh, really? That's interesting to know, Helex. I haven't noticed any frame drops. Normally, Streamlabs would tell me if it was having frame drops, but I haven't noticed it. Helex, I gotta tell you, Streamlabs has been really weird lately. It's been weird to me. It's been weird to Cinder Shadow. I don't know what's going on with Streamlabs, but they gotta fix their shit, because I'm getting kind of tired of all the... Ever since the most recent update, it's been struggling, and I don't know what they did, but it's driving me insane. Anyways, so what I was saying is you draw 2 extra cards, and you may choose to either choose to pay 4 life for each card you drew, and then keep those cards, or you may choose to put those cards back on top of your library in any order. So, you can put, it doesn't matter how you drew them, you can put them back in any order. So, the reason why it's super important to, have special rules for this card, so this card is a card that cheats itself. And that's important because it's one of the few cards in Magic that basically says you are allowed to cheat. And that's not cool. The reason why is because this card doesn't let you scry your cards. This card literally says you draw those cards. Which means when you draw those cards, you are putting them into your hand. And that's important to know because the moment they enter your hand, the game now becomes a game of honesty. You have to trust the idea that your opponent is an honest person and is going to either pay the 4 life for each card, which is very unlikely to happen, or they're going to put the 2 cards that they supposedly drew with trust and put them back in their library in whatever order they choose. And the reason why that's so important is because it's very common that people will draw, people who cheat will draw the 2 cards and basically pick 2 cards that they have in their hand of any choice that they so choose and put them back on top of their deck. And that's cheating. And that's the problem, is because the card enables cheating. And you have to, like, first of all, you have to play with people that you trust, okay? You don't want to play, like, especially when it comes to Sylvan Library, you don't want to play with people who cheat. You don't want to play with skeezy people. Because this is a card that says, hey, you can cheat with this card, and it's very easy to do so. So me and my friends, even though we all trust each other, and even if we were, like, playing with the proper rules of how this card works, I would trust the people I play Cube with. But we actually have a special rule where we basically say that you're not actually drawing the cards, you're scrying them. So usually what happens is my friends will put their hand down, and we do allow them to, like, look at their hand. That's totally fine, because that's how the card should properly work. They will put their hand down, and then they will draw two cards, and they'll basically look at the two cards separate from their hand. And then they will choose whether or not they want to pay the 4 life for each card, which will be, you know, they lose 8 life. Usually the card, normally people play it by scrying and then putting the 2 cards back. Very rarely do they actually pay the 4 life for each card. But, you know, they draw the cards, well, they scry, they choose whether or not, like, how they want to put them back, and then they're allowed to look at their hand to get a reference point, that's okay, and then put them back and then play on. So those are the special rules that we kind of designed around this card just to keep it fair, because it really sucks that the card was designed in a way that allows cheating. So you kind of have to be careful with that. And I really recommend that if you guys play with this card, basically, if you play with this card, I highly recommend that you errata the card with your own rules, saying that it's not drawing, it's scrying too. That's what you're going to want to do in order to keep people fair. So, you know, it's a very complicated card, and you have to be very careful with it, because, you know, there are skeezy people who will cheat with this card. The 2 should stay apart from the hand. Yeah, well, that's the problem, is because the card literally says you draw the cards. Like, and that means that they have to go into your hand. And people will cheat and be like, oh, well, my cards are mixed up, and I put the cards that I don't need into my deck, and blah, 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 blah. And it's not cool. So, you know, we just kind of try to be careful with it. And we usually say, like, okay, well, it's not really... We kind of errated it so that it's not a drawing effect, it's a scrying effect. Yeah, Streamlabs lost my 2 hours, 7 days to die stream with Cinder, where I wrote a scripted intro with Cinder Shadow. Multiple hours of my time, a solid hour of Cinder's time in preparation. Sucks, no one will ever... I'm sorry to hear that, Hell for Gamers. That really is not cool. I'm really upset at Streamlabs. They changed, like... And it's more than just the frame drops that have been a problem. They also changed a bunch of, like, the mechanics of how Streamlabs used to work. Like, they changed how their notifications work. They changed how the stream key updates. They changed how, like, sometimes some of my functions will not be turned on, even though they should be. Like, it's gotten really annoying, and I really don't like this update that they did. It's been super obnoxious, and it's been a pain in the butt, because I have to, like, go over everything really carefully, which I didn't have to do previously just because this update changed all these things. It's not fun. I hope they kind of fix it, you know, because I remember when I first got Streamlabs, I had a whole bunch of problems with it, but then they had a major update, and they fixed almost all the problems that I was having. And then with this update, they introduced new problems. So it's like... You know, I'm really hoping that they'll have another update and all those problems will be fixed. We'll have to see. The next card is a powerhouse monster. This is Vengevine. This card is so strong. This is a 4-mana 4/3 with haste that says whenever you cast a spell... let me get it to zoom. Oh, there it is. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's the second creature spell you cast this turn, you may return Vengevine from your graveyard to the battlefield. This card is obscenely strong. It's like, oh god. So it's actually really famous in Dredge decks. A lot of people play it in Dredge, because most people get it out for free, and it whomps face. A lot of the time in the cube, this is just a 4-mana 4/3 with haste. It's actually kind of rare for its second ability to trigger, but it does happen. I've seen it happen. Like, I legitimately have seen it happen. And it can get pretty scary in that way. But even just as a 4-mana 4/3 haster, this is not to be trifled with. This will womp face, and you're never sure if it's going to come back from the dead, which is a great feeling for the person playing it and a scary feeling for the person playing against it. So this is an amazing card. I actually opened this in a Rise of Eldrazi pack. So I do love this card a lot because I think it's actually a really expensive card, and I feel awesome knowing the fact that I actually cracked this in a pack. It's really cool, and it's very scary. Try again because I'm ready for more. That shit blows Minecraft away. I assume you're talking about 7 Days to Die. Yeah, it's a cool game. I personally like Minecraft a lot, but I am curious to see 7 Days to Die. Like, I really am. Next is a Survival of the Fittest. This card is obscenely strong. I gotta say, this is a proxy. This is not a real card. I mean, it's a card, obviously, but it's a fake version of Survival of the Fittest. I don't own a Survival of the Fittest. I don't think I really need to buy one because this proxy does just fine as it is. This card is obnoxiously strong. 2 mana for a green enchantment that says choose and discard a creature card. Search your library for a creature card, reveal that card to all players, and put it into your hand. Shuffle your library afterwards. This card it's really interesting because this card, like, discarding effects in my cube are kind of rare, and generally the discarding effects are very, very powerful effects. So, like, you're not going to see, like, lots of cards with discarding, but I do like the dynamic of there being really powerful cards that have a requirement of discarding something. Because that gives you an opportunity to kind of ask yourself, like, what is more important, the cards that are in my hand or the cards that I could potentially get with this discard effect or whatever? Because there are a few different ones. Like, we were talking about this with the counterspell Forbid. Forbid, you really have to think really hard about that. Like, when you're wanting to counter something and you know that you want to discard cards to get your Forbid back. It's one of those things where it's like, Forbid is really powerful, and if you want to discard to keep it, you got to really pay a heavy price for it. And this is one of those cards that really makes you feel like that. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, what's more important, what I have in my hand or what I could get? And I do love that dynamic because sometimes, like, it can work out and sometimes it can fall flat on its face. And that's really important to how the card works. You don't, like I said, in this cube, you don't really feel like this card is going to absolutely dominate everything. It just doesn't happen. There's risks and there's rewards for this kinds of card. So this is a great card to play with in green. Next is Azusa Lost But Seeking. This is from M25. I really love Azusa Lost But Seeking. I actually have a bunch of copies of her. I own 5 copies of her total. 4 of them are from Kamigawa, and this one is from M25. Now, you might be asking me why I don't play with the Kamigawa version and why I choose the M25 version instead. It's because I actually like this art better. The watermark is part of it too, but I think that the art that they did for this particular version of her is absolutely beautiful. If you've ever seen the original art for the Azusa Lost But Seeking from Kamigawa, she looks a little weird. I don't think she looks that great. So I like this one because she's much prettier in this particular art. She just looks very beautiful and young, and like really at peace. Whereas the Azusa Lost But Seeking from the original Kamigawa, it kind of shows her like flying in the air and stuff like that. It's really kind of weird. But I love this art. I love the watermark, and I love what this card does. It's a 3-mana 1/2 that says you may play 2 additional lands on each of your turn. This is really strong. It's a really strong effect. It's kind of like, it gives you a lot of power like what Fast Bond does. I think Fast Bond is more powerful, but this card, it feels good. I've seen her come out, and she's one of those cards that I was talking about where people don't really kill her. Like, I mean, sometimes people get scared and kill her, but a lot of the time, I've seen her last, like, until the end of a game. Like, multiple times. Like, she would be played as early as turn 2, and she would be dishing out lands a lot, and people don't really kill her, which is funny because you'd think that she's kind of like a Bolt the Bird kind of situation, where, like, oh, she's, you know, mana accelerating, and you want to stop the mana acceleration because the mana acceleration is what gets out the big scary stuff. But it's actually really surprising because she usually lives. She doesn't die very quickly like a lot of the other ones. And I think that it's a lot of the time because her ability seems really unassuming. And the level of threats that occur in a game of Cube, they rapidly grow. So, like, you really have to learn to pick your battles with removal. And she's not really a battle that you usually want to start, you know? Like, she survives a lot. She's very strong, and she survives very frequently. Next is, I love this card. This is a foil M10 Acidic Slime. If I remember correctly, this is the first ever printing of Acidic Slime, and it's a foil. When this card was first printed in M10, I knew it was really strong. Like, I knew, without any help of any kind, I knew that this was an absolutely incredibly powerful card. And it really, really shows. It's also cool, like, I love this card a lot because, first of all, I knew it was going to be strong when I first saw it. It's an original print from M10, and it's foil. So I cracked this in a booster pack as an M10 foil. And I love it. I've held on to it for a long time, and I absolutely adore it. This card is super duper crazy strong. 5 mana 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy an artifact, or an enchantment, or a land. This thing is always going to blow something up. Always. Like, it might not, like, ideally you want to use it for artifact and enchantment removal, but if you're dealing with a really powerful land that is, like, messing up your flow of game, this is going to blow it up. Like, it's awesome. And then the other thing, too, is that it has Death Touch. So, like, what's really nice about Acidic Slime, 9 times out of 10, it will blow up 2 things, okay? It's always going to blow up an artifact or an enchantment or a land, but even as a creature on the battlefield, it's also going to blow up a creature. And this is, like, in its own right, a form of creature removal in green, which is really, really nice. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this card do anything bad, ever. Like, it always feels good. It always feels amazing to get it out on the battlefield. It always feels amazing to blow something up. It always feels amazing to kill a creature with it. Like, it's fantastic. And this is one of those things where it's like, you would think that it's like, oh, 5 mana and it's a 2/2. Like, that sucks. But, like, the thing is that when people who try to understand, like, what they can use their removal on, when they see the, like, small numbers, like 2/2, they say to themselves, oh, like, I don't want to blow it up. It's so weak. Like, yeah, it's going to blow up my stuff, and yeah, it's going to kill a creature, but, like, I don't want to spend my removal on it because it's so small, and there's so many other big, scary things that I need to use my removal on. Like, it's a great card. This card is absolutely amazing. If you've never felt the absolute power and value of an Acidic Slime, you have to play with one. Like, you absolutely have to play with one of these bad boys, because they are so, so strong. Definitely one of my favorite green cards right there. This guy's awesome. This is Ulvenwald Tracker from Avacyn Restored. This is a 1 mana 1/1 human shaman, and it says tap. Hold on, let me see if I can get it to focus. There we go. Oh, darn it, went out of focus again. Maybe if I bring it super duper close. There we go. Target creature, tap 2 mana, tap this creature. Target creature you control fights another target creature. This card's amazing. So, this card actually gives green a form of removal, which is so, so nice. And, like, on top of that, this is another example of a card that people are scared to kill. It's, like, that's the thing, is that, like, little tiny guys, I'm telling you, they're so important. Like, the little tiny guys are so, so important because people are scared to kill them. Like, people, they don't want to waste their removal. Like I said with the slime, people don't want to remove this guy because it's so small. Like, if you cast Ulvenwald Tracker for 1 mana, and people are like, oh man, like, my Doomblade is 2 mana, so I have to spend 2 mana to kill a 1/1 for 1? Like, and other things like that. Like, People don't like using removal on little teeny tiny guys like this. It's a feels bad kind of situation, which is what makes this guy so strong. Like, this guy can last a long, long time, and he can be used as removal over and over and over again in green. In green! It's ridiculous. He's so good. Oh, this card I've had a long time, and I love this card. This is a card that here, I'll just go ahead and show you. This is an original printing of Doubling Season. Let me catch up on chat real quick. I was kind of not paying attention. 160 days on console without dying, and I just stopped playing because I felt I beat it. But Alpha 15 versus, okay, 18. Okay, that could be kind of cool. Zombies are way different, and bad luck can really get you. Ooze Tribal is fun. Oh, yeah. That was kind of an interesting switch in subject there. The Death Touch is for creatures. It affects everything. Yeah, it's really good. Cinder Shadow was AFK, but he's back now. Welcome back, Cinder Shadow. It doesn't hit Planeswalkers. Yeah, that's true, but that's alright. Let's see. Helfer Gamer says, that's what makes all creatures get minus so powerful. Like, yeah, it's true. But yeah, this is an original print of Doubling Season. I opened this way back in high school in a booster pack, and it was really interesting because I remember this card was one of the first cards that really got my gears turning as, like, a combo player. Because, like, I was a pretty simple player in Magic for a long time until around high school when Ravnica came out, and I opened this card in a booster pack, and it was like, I saw it and I was like, this card is so strong. This card is so strong. And, like, that got the gears turning in my head. Like, I built decks with this card. I built decks around this card. This card's been in and out of decks. It's been in commander decks. It's finally found its rightful place in my cube. I've had this card for a long time, and I absolutely adore it. I think it's also worth a small fortune. I'm not sure how much it's actually worth now, but I do love it. I don't plan on ever selling it. It's very precious to me. I have a lot of memories of playing Magic tied to this card, so I'll probably never sell it ever. But I love the fact that its final resting home is here in my cube, because my cube is like the pinnacle of Magic, and I like the pinnacle of Magic for me personally. So it's nice that I have all these cards that I have all these memories tied to, and they're all in my cube. So it's like, playing with my cube is like a big nostalgia trip for me almost every time I play it. And this card definitely does it for me all the time. And this card combos with everything. Like, this card combos with everything. It's ridiculous. Hardcore beast mode combo card. We were all simple in the 90s. We had no idea what power we did and equally didn't have. Yeah, it's very true. Yes, Doubling Season is a lot. It does tons of stuff. It's ridiculous. Next is Sylvan Caryatid. So this is like a slightly better Birds of Paradise. It's a 2-mana 0/3 with Defender and Hexproof, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So this card's really good. And the thing is that it's the bird that refuses to be bolted. This guy will never die. I've seen multiple different games of this guy, and I remember multiple different times thinking to myself that I wanted to kill this guy and I couldn't. It's like a bird that, like I said, it's a big deal when you have a Birds of Paradise that never dies. This card is very, very strong. I did open this in a booster pack of Theros a long time ago, and I remember this card being very strong when I played in Theros, and it's still very strong even now. And it's really funny because I've had people kind of like question it a little bit. They're like, I don't know if this card's very good. But then they get a chance to play with it, and they're like, oh my god, this card is so strong. It's so strong. And it's like, yeah, because nobody can kill it, and it's always going to mana fix you. It's going to get you any color you need. It's untouchable, and it's got a big, fat, Sylvan Caryatid booty. It's a big old plant booty, So, like, this card makes a big difference. It's a huge deal. I like it a lot. Next is Lurking Predators. This card's very hit or miss. It's really weird because this card has been in the cube since I first built it, and Sometimes it really changes the entire battlefield, and sometimes it does nothing. I've actually seen this card do nothing before. I one time, like I said, I only had one game where it really did nothing, and when that happened, it was because it's a 6 mana spell, like it's a 6 mana green enchantment. It says whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card on the bottom of your library. So, a lot of the time when this card gets played, it does stuff. It really does. But I actually remember a game that I played where I got this out on the battlefield pretty late in the game. And my best friend who I was fighting against, his battlefield was totally set up. He had all the creatures he needed. He didn't need any new spells or anything. He was totally comfortable with everything he had on the battlefield. And when I played this Lurking Predators, he chose to just not play any spells. Like every single turn, he would just like swing and do abilities on his creatures, and that was it. And like I said, that was the only game where I've ever had Lurking Predators not do anything. And it was a weird feeling. But, I mean, a lot of the time, you can get a lot of value out of this card. It comes out pretty late in the game. And, like, sometimes that can feel not so great considering how late it comes out. But a lot of the time, like, I've gotten some pretty scary things off of this card before. So it's worth playing. I really do recommend it. But also keep in mind that if the person you're playing against has a totally set board state, and they don't care about playing spells anymore, it's possible, like it's not likely to happen very often, but it's possible that this card will come out and do nothing. So keep that in mind. And take some coffee. We hit the 2-hour mark, but I'm not quite done with green. I've been really slow rolling this, so I'll try and get through the next few cards, and then we'll wrap it up, guys, okay? This card I love. I love this card. I actually wish I had an original print from New Phyrexia, but this is the print that I have, so this is what I'm using. This is Beast Within. This is from the Heroes vs. Monsters dual decks. This is a absolutely important card in green. Beast Within, it's a 3-mana instant that says destroy target permanent, its controller puts a 3/3 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. This card is basically a mono-green Vindicate. I don't know if you guys know what Vindicate is, but this card is a mono-green Vindicate. You barely ever feel bad about that 3/3 green creature. This card is so powerful, and it makes such a major impact in green. This card's a big, big fucking deal. Like, huge, huge deal. It always comes out of nowhere. Always, always, always comes out of nowhere. Nobody ever expects it. And it always completely changes the game. I heavily, heavily recommend people playing with this card. It is, I would say this is, if you're building a cube and you're working on green, you need this card. You need it. You don't just want it in your cube. You need this card if you're playing green in a cube. Because green has so limited options for permanent removal. Like, creature removal is one thing. Like, there's little to no creature removal. This will remove creatures and then some. And like 9 times out of 10, this card gets used as creature removal. Like, I've seen this card used more for creature removal than anything else. And it's such a big freaking deal. If you play cube and you're building green, you absolutely need to have this card in your cube. Like, go out and buy yourself a copy. I actually don't know the price tag on it. I was lucky enough to have this in my collection, so I didn't have to pay for it. But I really recommend people buying this card. And I feel like it shouldn't be that expensive. I really don't think it is, but I don't know. But you gotta play with this card. Like, it's pretty much non-negotiable. This next card, this card is my favorite green creature ever printed. Hands down. Like, I'm not even exaggerating that. This is my #1 favorite green creature of all time. This is a foil Yavimaya Dryad. This is from Time Spiral. It's uncommon. Like I said, this is my #1 favorite green creature of all time. It is a 3-mana Dryad that's a 2/1 with Forest Walk, and it says when Yavimaya Dryad comes into play, you may search your library for a forest card and put it into play tapped under target player's control. If you do, shuffle your library. Here's a beast to go with your elk. That's actually pretty good, Wild Goat. I didn't even think of that. That's really funny. Because you're pretty much like, remember I was saying Beast Within is so extremely powerful. It just goes to show you like why Oko is so powerful. Oko gives creature removal to green. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But Beast Within is kind of like that. Like, you need it. But anyways, yeah, this is my favorite green creature of all time. Mr. Habanero is my favorite green creature of all time. Aw, Cinder Shadow. You're so sweet. Love you, man. But I'm such a spicy pepper. Wouldn't I be red? Anyways, I love this card. I adore it. I even went so far, I only have non-foil copies of this card, so I went out and I bought this card special, because I wanted a foil copy of it. So, this card does so much for so little. So, first of all, you can, like, the main thing is that it can mana accelerate you. So, a good green creature is going to mana accelerate you, which she does. But the other thing that makes her so good is that it says here she searches for a forest of any kind. So, like, not only does she mana accelerate you, she can also find you dual lands. Do you have a savanna? You can throw a savanna in play. Do you have a taiga? Maybe you want to throw a taiga in play. Like, or maybe you're working with Temple Garden. Or maybe you're working with Stomping Grounds. You know, you can throw those in play off of her. She only searches for forest cards. Doesn't say basic forest. Doesn't say non-basic forest. It says forest card. She will search you what you need. She will fix you for what you need in green, which is amazing. But there's more. Like, you thought that was amazing? She gets better. So maybe let's say that you're playing this really late game and you don't need to mana fix yourself. Maybe what you need instead is not mana fixing. Maybe what you need is a way to get more points of damage in. Maybe you need something that's going to give you an edge on your opponent. Well, it says here on her that you may search your library for a forest card and put it into play tapped under target player's control. It doesn't say your control. It says target player's control. So maybe you're in late game and you don't need to mana fix yourself. Maybe you need those extra points of damage. So you can look through your library for a basic forest, put it into play under your opponent's control, and then next turn you can swing with an unblockable 2/1 Forest Walker. It's amazing. She has basically mana accelerated me whenever I've needed it. And I even used her. There's one specific game that I played against my best friend where she killed him. She was the final points of damage that actually killed my opponent. She put a forest into play under his control and then proceeded to swing every combat step after that, unblockable. And he didn't have an answer for it, and I killed him with her. So, like I said, this is my favorite green creature of all time, okay? A 3-mana 2/1, which feels alright. She has Forest Walk for evasion, which is alright. She mana fixes you for what you need. She'll get you a forest card, so maybe you need red and green. Maybe you need white and green. Maybe you need black and green. She will get it for you. Maybe you need the... And then she's also aggressive. So she can also be evasive, unblockable, and aggressive. Like, this is literally everything I've ever wanted in a single green creature, which is why it's my favorite green creature of all time. And then the thing is about that, on top of that, this is absolutely fantastic, beautiful Rebecca Guay art. Absolutely. Like, this is, like, Rebecca Guay at her absolute finest. I'm trying to get it to focus. There it is. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love it. It's like The card is great. The ability, like the abilities are great. The art is great. This is like a home run, perfect green creature in my eyes. Absolutely love this card. I adore it. I adore this card. Favorite green creature of all time, hands down. Moving on. Let me catch up. New stream title: Habanero spends 2 hours wishing he was playing his cube. Yeah, that's true. We'll do a stream sometime where we'll actually get some gameplay in on the cube, and you guys can see what it's like. Richard Lash, thank you for joining. Good to see you, dude. Oh man, very cool. Thank you for joining. Do I have $2,000 land cards laying around? Nope. Well, I mean, maybe you have the shock lands, you know? Like, that's the thing about the Avamea Dryad. Like, yeah, sure, you don't have a Taiga, but maybe you have a Stomping Grounds. Stomping Grounds is like $20 or less, I think. So, like, it's reasonable. She can do it for you. Next is Polychronos, the World Eater. This card's pretty awesome. This is a pretty beast mode Hydra. I actually really like this card because it's a 4-mana 5/5, which should be enough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's enough. But you can also Monstrosity X him, and when you Monstrosity X him, he comes into play with X +1/+1 counters on him, and oh god, his ability is so complicated. When Polychronos World Eater becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Polychronos. So he's like a massive, like, board wipe fighting creature, which is really cool. I've seen this guy do some pretty wacky stuff. I've seen games where he is incredibly strong and he never gets monstrosity. I've also seen games where he does get monstrosity and he's a board wipe, which is really necessary in green. Like, it's really strong and he makes a big impact on the board. Like, I would say I've played more games where he's just a 4-mana 5/5, but even as a 4-mana 5/5, like, he feels amazing. Like, he really, really does. And I gotta say, like, this is another one of those situations where it's like, what's his name? That black card. Jazam Jin, that's it. Jazam Jin, eat your heart out. Like, I mean, green 4-mana 5/5s, you know what I'm saying? With no downside. This is another green creature I like a lot. This is another form of really useful, what I consider to be creature-based creature removal in green. This is Deadly Recluse. This card is very, very strong. It's a 2-mana 1/2 spider with reach and death touch. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. This guy does work. Oh my god, does this guy do work. I've seen him, like, a major problem for green is dealing with flyers, and this guy will basically says, go ahead, send your flyer at me. I dare you. You know? This guy's really good. And even if it's not going to kill a flyer, it's going to kill something. Like, he's going to kill something. Like, he's very defensive. He's not a very offensive creature, but he's great on defense. Absolutely spectacular. Would recommend playing with it. Great for dealing with flyers, which green has a rough time with. Next is Troll Ascetic. This is an original print from Mirrodin. I have actually owned this since my childhood while playing in Mirrodin, and I love this guy. I own about 3 copies of this guy, but I think this is my only actual Mirrodin copy. The other ones I think are from, like, commander sets and stuff like that. So he's a 3-mana 3/2, which is amazing. He has what we like to call Troll Shroud, which basically says Troll Ascetic can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. And he has tap 2, regenerate Troll Ascetic. This guy, he never goes away. Like, he basically lives and lives and lives. And it's really awesome because you can throw, like, enchantments on him, you can throw artifacts on him, and you can sleep soundly at night knowing that no matter what you stack on this guy, he's pretty much never going to die. The only thing that can really kill this guy is, I guess, -1/-1 effects and sacrificing effects. That's pretty much the only thing that can... And when I say -1/-1, I mean, like a -1 effect that says all creatures get -2/-2 or something like that. That would kill him. And also, like, board wipes, I guess, would probably kill him too. Well, no, board wipes wouldn't kill him either, unless it says... Unless it's like Wrath of God, you know, because Wrath of God says creatures cannot be regenerated. But this guy he doesn't die. Like, I have seen him kill people, I've seen him stick around until the very end of the game. He's very hard to deal with, and he's very aggressive, and he's a lot of fun to play with. Great for green. I have a lot of stories about this card. This is Tooth and Nail. This is also a copy that I opened back in Mirrodin when I was a kid. I love this card. It's a super tutor. Yes, you can play it for 7, but a lot of the time it gets played for 9. It's very easy to mana accelerate to 9 in cube games in a very short amount of time. And I told you guys about that game where I basically played a Tooth and Nail for 9, and I got a Darksteel Colossus out into play, and a Indrik Stomp Howler into play off of this card, which is amazing. This card will solve problems. It will, this card will end games. It'll solve problems. It'll do so many different things. Like I said, usually when Tooth and Nail hits the battlefield, 9 times out of 10 the game's over. Like, it's a game ender, straight up. Great, fantastic card. For anybody who can't read that for whatever reason, search your library for up to 2 creature cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your library, or put 2 creature cards from your hand into play. And then it's a 7-mana cast sorcery with a 2-mana Entwine for 9 total. So, yeah, this card's really, really strong, and it'll either tip the board or the game in your favor, or it'll just flat out end a game, which I've seen it do multiple times. Next is Thornling. This I actually have a lot of good memories with. This card's very strong. I would say this is probably like the 3rd strongest of the Morphling creatures. And it's also, yeah, I'd say this is the 3rd strongest Morphling creature. And I've seen it win games. I've also seen it hold defensively. I've seen it hold offensively. It's a lot of fun to play with. What makes this guy so strong is he can gain haste when you play him, if you play him for 6 instead of 5. He also can gain trample, so he can run over stuff. His protection ability is gaining indestructible, which is really nice. The indestructible ability has done all sorts of things. I've seen this guy... I've seen people play him for 6 to attack immediately and hold open a 7th mana to keep him protected. He's ridiculous. He's ridiculous. Like I said, I really think this is probably the 3rd most powerful of the Morphlings. I would say the white one is the most powerful. The blue one is the 2nd most powerful. The green one is the 3rd most powerful. The red one is I would say the gold one is probably the 4th most powerful, the red one is the 5th, and then the black one is the 6th. So, because there are 6 Morphlings, and I have all of them in here. But yeah, this guy's amazing. This guy's really cool. Next is a classic. This is a Birds of Paradise. This is actually a proxy of Birds of Paradise. I do own several copies of Birds of Paradise, but... there's kind of a bit of a swagger to playing with one that's old school. And like I said, even though this is a proxy, I just kind of like it better. I own a Birds of Paradise from Ravnica, and I own a Birds of Paradise from 9th edition and all that stuff. But I really like this one. I like the art. I like the old school look to it, and even though it's a fake card, I just like it better. I really do. So, it just, it's a Birds of Paradise, and it's always going to be useful, and it's always going to be nice, and you should definitely play with it. If you're playing green, you should probably play with a Birds of Paradise. Just watch out for those lightning bolts, you hear? Watch out for those lightning bolts. The very last green card is Magus of the Candelabra. I like this guy. He's really interesting to play with. He's basically a green Candelabra of Tawnos. I don't know, this guy's very hit or miss. It happens, I've seen him wreck. I've seen him, be very strong, and then I've seen him do nothing. So, it just kind of really depends with this guy. A lot of the time when I've seen him be really powerful, it's because he's doing stuff with other cards. Like he'll like for example, when we go through the land base, you'll see that there are lands that produce multiples of mana. There are some lands that produce 2 mana instead of 1. There's a land that produces 3 instead of 1. There's a land that produces 4 instead of 1. So I mean, with cards like lands like that, this guy's very, very strong. But I mean, like, it just kind of depends. Like, usually you have to have the cards to work with this guy to make him really strong, but when it does happen, it's pretty powerful and it's a lot of fun to deal with. So I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend it. But, if you have one, throw him in and try him out and see what you think. I think he's pretty good. So he's actually been in the cube since the beginning. I've never had a reason to take him out. So yeah, that's all the green cards, guys. We're about 20 minutes past the normal time of that I would normally be here for. But, I'm glad you guys stuck around with me. I know that when I did the first stream, I kind of powered through the white and blue cards really quick because it was the first time I did it. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing, so I kind of wanted to steamroll through them. And that kind of made me feel upset because I didn't really get to talk about them in detail the way that I've been talking about these other cards. But I really like being here for 2 hours and talking about my favorite cards and what I like about them and why I play with them. So I'm glad you guys like to hang out and listen to me talk about cards because I really love it. We basically have 3 more piles to get through, which will be in different streams, obviously. And I think that it's possible that the last 2 streams of the cube will probably be longer because when I'm doing these piles, we're doing 50 cards at a time. The last 2 piles are 60 cards instead of 50. So that might be a little bit different. They might be longer. I don't know. I'll try and be a little faster about them. We'll see. But I do kind of hope that maybe I'll be able to do a stream where I can actually play the cube with you guys. I'll play it with my friend, and you guys will be able to have a chance to see what the cube really does when it's played in action. And I think you guys will be surprised how cool and fun it can be. I really hope that you guys are also interested in trying to build your own cubes or working on your cubes or whatever. Because it really does, I honestly think it's the best way to play Magic. It's my favorite, and I love it, and I really hope that maybe I could somehow share that experience with you guys by showing you cards and making you guys want to try it out yourself. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I really appreciate you all being here. I have a blast every time I get to go through these cards. I get to talk about the memories and stuff and all the fun. So, I'm glad you guys want to come in here and share that with me. It's a lot of fun. Bo Falcon says, that was a lot of fun, lots of cool cards, always takes me back to memory lane. Yeah. Wild Goat says, I'm cube illiterate, but is there multicolored also? Absolutely, dude. Let me kind of give you a quick spoiler. We'll see it. You won't be able to see it until the second stream that comes up next, but here's a fat pile of gold cards. This is 60 cards, all gold, every single one of them. Not a single monocolored card in this pile, and you guys are going to see some crazy, crazy stuff, so look forward to it. Just a little bit of a spoiler, a little taste to wet your beak for the next couple of streams. So anyways, yeah, thank you all so much for being out here. I had a great time. If you haven't subscribed or to the channel yet, please do so. Hit that notification bell so that you know when I'm going to go live. In the description below, I have information for my Discord. That is a great way to contact me, as well as it's a fun place to hang out where we talk about Magic cards, we talk about cooking, we talk about video games, all sorts of fun stuff. It is the same name as the channel, so it is easy to find. It's public. You can join it for free with no problem. Also, feel free to check out my DeviantArt profile page, which is also the link is in the description below for that if you're interested in my art, which we will be getting back to very soon. Feel free to go ahead and look it over and check out the art that I like to do. I love to paint Magic cards. I also do canvas, so check that out. If you're interested in buying my paintings or also just donating to the channel because you are awesome and I love all of you and I know you want to donate to me, There is a PayPal link in the description below. So if you would like to donate, which I would greatly appreciate, you can find it there. And also I have a mailing address to a P.O. box, so if you want to send me fan mail or whatever, my good friend Bo Falcon not too long ago sent me some very nice fan mail, which I actually have put some of it in the cube, as you can see here. This is an example of one of the cards that Bo Falcon sent me in my fan mail, and I put it into my cube. Then the address for my P.O. box is also in the description below, so please check it out and feel free to send me something. So thank you all so much for being out here. I loved having you all in here, and thank you. I will probably see some of you soon in probably some of the other streams where I hang out. So I will see you next time, guys. Bye! Follow your dreams, guys. You know you want to. You better follow your dreams. I'm telling you to do it. Do it. Follow your dreams.